Hello there, you Italians on the African front. I am, of course, Rear Admiral Radar Bait, and we are covering the Cesare today, the Tier 5 premium Italian battleship, and possibly one of my favourite premiums. It's very much a ship you can play when you don't really want to think too much, and you just want to have a bit of seal clubbing. Now, I should stress this game is not very long, and I am actually cutting out a bit of it as well, because there is a section where basically fuck all actually happens, and that's extremely boring to watch. So this video will not be very long, but that's kind of symptomatic of a lot of the games that you're going to play in Cesare. She's a tier 5 ship, so naturally a lot of the games she gets are going to be either tier 7 or tier 5. And in the tier 5 games, which is what we have for you here, it tends to be a very short affair. In the tier 7 games, they can be a lot more exciting, and I could show you any number of tier 7 matches where I've performed extremely well in the Cesare. However, I wanted to show this one specifically because I want to bring up a point about Cesare that is A, not really brought up very often by people when they speak about it, and B, isn't really shown off in a lot of the other games I had, which were undoubtedly better games, but they weren't very good at showing off the thing that I want to emphasize in this particular video, and that's that the Cesare, a particularly mobile battleship, is also one hell of a tank. And we're going to start just going over a few quick plus points, shall we say, of the Cesare's design while we make our way down to the A point to engage in a bit of combat. And if you're looking at the map like I wasn't, you might realise that this is a really bad idea. But the Cesare is a World War I vintage ship, and it also served a great deal in World War II. It's definitely a ship collectors will probably want to pick up. It's got a lot of history, probably more so than any other Italian ship that I can think of, certainly, that served in either war. Cesare is pretty much the most storied of the bunch of them. It's got the longest and most interesting history, in my opinion, anyway. And it's got I don't know why I said 12. It's got 10 320mm guns. Now, these guns are a small caliber at just 320, compared to, say, for example, the Congo with its 14-inch guns. However, that is a benefit more than it is a curse. Aside from the fact that your overmatch is a bit dodgy, but, you know, that's the same for a 14-inch gun anyway, the Cesare's small caliber means that the shells tend to stick a lot better in cruisers, and of course, as you saw with that Wyoming, are still capable of citadeling broadside idiots. Sorry, Wyoming, you were just being a bit stupid. But they tend to stick very nicely in cruisers, which is not really something we can say of Congo, who tends to score a lot of overpens on cruisers due to the larger gun caliber. And this is probably something it's probably my favourite aspect of the Cesare's gunnery, aside from her absolutely ridiculous accuracy. I mean, you saw there firing at the front of an Omaha, that's 3 out of 5 hits, it's pretty damn good. Cesare's guns are absurdly accurate, and for a lot of battleship players who, or at least people who don't enjoy the gunnery of battleships and tend to avoid them because of it, Cesare isn't necessarily one you want to avoid, because again, her gunnery is just that accurate. Still not cruiser levels of accuracy, although in its original version it actually was, and I'm about to bounce on an Omaha, which is a little bit depressing, but it is extremely accurate by battleship standards, and certainly something that people who are generally very against battleships because of that weird, funky dispersion are going to be, I think, quite pleased with. The Cesare is very forgiving, and in fact there's another Citadel, although that's an Omaha, so it's not like it's hard. But Cesare is truly an experience that I will certainly continue playing with for pretty much as long as I play the game. It's one of those few ships that really is not going to bore me at any point. I'm always happy to knock out a round in Cesare because it's really, really good. And, you know, being one of only a few Italian ships in the game, whenever I want to get my military incompetence on, Cesare is one of the ships that, well, I have to play. I mean, the Roma's not all that. The Abruzzi is garbage, and I am trying to get a review for it, but you've got to understand it's the most painful thing I've ever had to do. And I don't actually have the Dowster, however, I would recommend Dowster over Abruzzi because it's just better. But the other Italian ships aside, Cesare is truly an enjoyable experience where I don't really have anything I can say negative about it. The gunnery is fantastic. The anti-air is, generally speaking, bad, but this is a tier 5 battleship. None of them are particularly good. It's not quite Congo, but it's only a little bit worse, and I was assuming, that being in Emil Bartan, that he'd be moving a lot faster, but apparently not, and I'm going to miss every single shot. But the anti-air is iffy. Concealment is pretty damn good. I believe you can get concealment down to 11.4, which is fantastic. It's actually only a little bit worse than the Roma at tier 8, and you can mount the concealment mod on the Roma, so go figure. But the manoeuvrability also is absolutely wonderful. Cesare manoeuvres in such a brilliant way. Granted, it's probably a bad time for me to bring that up, considering that I'm about to fail to dodge a torpedo, but that was largely due to my own stupidity rather than a failing of the Cesare. She's extremely manoeuvrable, and hopefully that's a trait that continues with the mainline Italian battleships. It's certainly something that I would enjoy playing with. But the extreme manoeuvrability, coupled with this very reliable cruiser-killing firepower, and of course the ability to deal with battleships reasonably well at the tier, coupled that with a undersung but very impressive survivability, and Cesare really doesn't have any minus points. You know, manoeuvrability good, concealment good, firepower good, survivability good. She's not really got anything that I would say could make her a bad ship, and in a world where pretty much every ship in World of Warships has something that is terrible, even the Belfast has its negative points, namely a god-awful ability to tank shells. But even the Belfast has its negative points, and Cesare just doesn't. There's another Citadel. There's nothing about Cesare that I would say makes it a bad ship. It's the entire package put together makes it the best battleship at tier 5 easily. It just is the best at tier 5. There's no debating that. There isn't any better. But it also is, I would say, one of the few ships where if it's double up tiered, as in if I'm putting my Cesare into a tier 7 game, I don't care. I've had Kraken Unleashed with 130,000 damage in the Cesare in a tier 7 game. It's that easy. The ship itself is absolutely glorious, and even in a full up tier, you're going to be able to have so much fun because it's that reliable. It's that accuracy that really brings Cesare to a level where nothing competes with it. And I tell you what, whilst I'm pretty certain that the Roma, with its terrible HE and iffy accuracy but great concealment, is going to be the basis that the Italian battleship line is built upon, I would not be disappointed if it instead went for the Cesare and built itself on some pretty nice HE, great armor piercing, wonderful accuracy, and that extreme manoeuvrability. The accuracy and manoeuvrability especially, if they became the core features of the Italian battleship line, I would probably make that my favourite battleship line in the game. In a heartbeat, because accuracy is that important. I mean, this is Yamato levels of fuck off. You know, the Yamato is the only other ship in which I can so reliably delete things, and so reliably go into the Citadel, which is interesting to me at least, because that's always been Yamato's claim to fame, and if this accuracy continues with the Italian battleships, well, that's going to put the Italians on par with the Japanese, if not superior, in terms of accuracy, which would certainly be something that would interest me, regardless of how unhistorical it might be. Italian battleships in reality were known to be a little bit crap for accuracy, largely because none of the Italian ships had radar, because Mussolini was stupid, and oh look, another Citadel. Yeah, deleting cruisers is the job of the Cesare, and it does it oh so well. But there really isn't anything negative I can say about Cesare. It's actually why I wanted to cover it for this review, is because, well, it's because there's nothing bad to say about it. You know, I've just had to finish going along with the Haida review, and I love the Haida, but I had to say a lot of things about it that I'm not too happy with. Had to avoid recommending it to a great deal of people, and I always want to be able to recommend a premium ship to as many people as possible. And that's really why I wanted to follow up the Haida review with the Cesare, which I can recommend to pretty much absolutely everybody, because if you're a fan of battleship gameplay, this is just going to be more of that with more accuracy, and if you're a fan of cruiser gameplay, this is just going to be a battleship that thinks it's a cruiser, and that's really, really nice. Of course, if you're a fan of destroyer gameplay, well, this is absolutely nothing to do with the things that you enjoy, so you're probably not going to be very happy here, or, well, the same for aircraft carriers, but most of us like cruisers and or battleships, so the Cesare should bring something to the table that pretty much all of us can enjoy. Now, there is going to be a cut now, because I'm not actually going to get into much of a fight for a little bit, and then shortly afterwards the game is going to end, so I'll see you in a second. Okay, so we've moved forward a little bit, and we are going after the enemy Wyoming. This game is pretty much finished, and it was, like I said, a very, very short game, but that is very, very common in the Cesare, especially when you get down-tiered. However, I did feel like it shows off the ability to tank at the Cesare with all the shells I was taking early on in the match, with very little support from the team, and Cesare tanked that beautifully. Bear in mind, of course, I am running the flag that reduces the duration of a fire, and I am also running India Delta to boost up the amount of health I can get back from my heals. But Cesare tanks extremely well when she's top tier. When she's bottom tier, she's a bit squishy. Well, actually, she's very squishy if we're being honest, but when she's top tier, Cesare tanks like absolutely nothing else. And that is part of why I can highly recommend her. She's just got nothing wrong with her. And even the things that she does reasonably well, like the tanking, she does better than a lot of potential counterparts like the Congo, which can't take shells for absolutely anything. So that's pretty much the long and short of my opinions on the Cesare. I find it to be extremely competitive, and I have absolutely no complaints about her performance. Wargaming could release a dozen different versions of this ship with the exact same stats, and I'd probably buy all a dozen of them, because I'm a consumerist worm, and this ship has wormed its way into my heart as my new favourite battleship in the game. Okay, so that's the end of the game, and this is the result screen with 98,600 damage. It's not the most I've ever done in Cesare, but this is a tier 5 game, so there aren't really very big health pools for me to farm damage out of, so that's still a pretty respectable performance, I think. 4 planes shot down, again Cesare's anti-air is a bit iffy, and 2 ships destroyed, but I did pick up the Dreadnought from all of that tanking done at the start of the game, the Devastating Strike and the First Blood also, of course, and Cesare really is brilliant. I would recommend it endlessly. And if necessary, I will make another video proving how good it can be in Tier 7, just to make my point even more that there is nothing wrong with Cesare and that she's perfect. But, you know, I should really stop singing the praises of Cesare for like 20 seconds, because at some point I'm going to have to actually edit this all together. So I will see you in the next review, which is going to be for HMS Gallant.